Jamaica is a highly prospective target area for different kinds of deposits in an island arc terrain.
As probably the most widespread, intensive, and in-depth exploration program that's ever been carried out in this island.
5 or 6 years worth of work into just 2.
No one else has ever done this before. There has been historic work on the island, trending back 150 years.
I think they're getting excited, as we are, so stay tuned.
Hello and welcome to our Mines and Money 5 at 5 show, which today is sponsored by Kenorland Minerals Limited, Oroco Resources and Oroco Resources, and is brought to you in association with Resource Global Network. For those of you attending 5 at 5 for the first time, the aim of 5 at 5 is 5 guests at 5 p.m. is to maintain engagement between investors and miners through a lively interactive format whilst we await the return of physical events. A few admin announcements before we start. To make it as interactive as possible, please have your video switched on. To ask a question, you have 2 options. You can submit them via the chat function. The chat function is at the bottom of the screen. And also at the bottom of the screen, there is the invite participants function, where there you can go and wave your virtual hand. We can then go and unmute you, and you can then ask your question live. We'll also be having polling questions throughout the webinar where you can vote. For today's show, we have a great lineup of guests. They are Zach Flood, President and CEO of Kenorland Minerals, Adam Smith, Vice President, Business Development, Corporate Finance for Oroco Resource, Rob Bruggeman, President and CEO of Canstar Resources, Paola Rojas, Managing Director of Synergy Resources Capital, and George Petker, Founding Partner of Versatech Capital for Mining. So today is the 1-year anniversary of lockdown in the UK. So I thought with that in mind, we'd actually start off with an events related question. So bringing our first polling question of the day up. 1 year ago, the mining events industry shut down. We've been running online events for 1 year now. When are you next planning to attend a physical mining conference? And you've got a choice of 5 options there, Q3 2021, Q4 this year, or even into next year. Whilst you are all voting, let's just briefly talk to a couple of our panelists. Perhaps turning to Paola first from Synergy Resources Capital. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and about the investments of Synergy? And I guess when are you next plans to do international travel?
Hi, Andrew. It's always good to be here. So thanks for having me. So Synergy Resource Capital is a corporate advisory and investor firm. We work with mining and technology in a broad sense. So it's a bit of mining tech and also software and other sort of a different audience than this, but we do a bit of both. We've been working mostly with the Americas and Australia because it's where we have the most experience in. And we're based in Sydney. So I'm in Sydney today. The sun is shining, which wasn't for the last week. If you heard, we've had a bit of rain. We like the small companies. Sometimes they're private, sometimes they are public, small caps and startups. So we're sort of in that growth phase. That's what we like the most. And that's for our investments and our clients as well, because there's a lot of overlap in both. And yeah, so precious metals, it's obviously a big thing. Copper, my dad was a copper porphyry expert, so I've been around copper projects my whole life. Yeah, and the current situation or the current environment has made a lot of our interests, the companies that we've been talking to, go really well. So that's been good, very exciting. So I'm originally from Argentina, and that's probably enough. In terms of the next conference, well, Australia, we're very lucky. We've already been to a physical, conference. Everything is kind of open here, so I feel a bit sad, because not everybody's experiencing that. But of course, we can't leave the country, so that's been that's the restriction that we do have. So I think that would be it.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And perhaps turning to our second investor guest, who's George Petker, founding partner of Versatech Capital for Mining. Perhaps you can just tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about Versatech Capital for Mining, and also when you think that you're next planning to attend a physical mining conference.
Okay, well, Versatech Capital for Mining, we're a boutique firm. We're personally invested in pretty much any project that we work to endeavor to raise funds for, and we also operate where we're especially capable in locating private entities with mining properties. We're generally into the advanced area of those properties, meaning that they may be brownfield, those type of scenarios, and we have a lot of I spent many years in Toronto. I live in California. Currently, we've just expanded into Turkey, where we feel there's a wonderful opportunity with sort of today's technology being applied into a more ancient culture, but a culture that believes in precious metals versus their currencies. So kind of that's what we do. And it's been an exciting business to be part of, and I've been doing it since I was 19, and as you can tell, I'm certainly a lot older than that. So attending I do miss attending. I think what's happened though is we've become, because many of our clients are now also managing their own portfolios and things much more directly than through funds, a variety of things like that. They're especially interested in individual companies versus, say, abroad, at least the ones we're dealing with, say, versus a broad ETF. So we're excited to be at these functions because whether they're virtual or in person, it's always great to have it in person because you can feel touch. That's always a wonderful aspect of it. So to me, probably the earliest I'll be doing something would be in the third quarter of 2021.
Okay. And then just to go around our three mining guests, Rob Bruggeman, when are you planning to go to a mining event?
Well, I'm based in Toronto. So realistically, I'm thinking probably Q1 of 2021, but yeah, it feels like I've been cooped up working from home for a long time. So I'm hoping it's Q3 of this year, but I'm assuming with the way things are going that yeah, it's probably another year away.
Sure. And turning to Adam Smith of Oroco.
Thanks, Andrew. I want to travel as soon as it's possible. I think I'll probably visit our project site this summer, subject to getting vaccinated, which here is sort of expected by May or June. And I think the majority of us on this call will probably be vaccinated by the end of summer, sometime in September. But I suspect that travel restrictions won't be lifted for some time after that. So while I'm getting used to and enjoying these video calls, it's great to see you all around the world today. There really is nothing like getting out there and getting in front of people. So I'll be traveling as soon as I can.
And yourself, Zach?
I don't have anything in the agenda for the rest of this year, but hopefully round up in Vancouver next year, and then PDAC hopefully is in person. But yeah, we're definitely going to site this year. I'll be hopefully in Quebec at the end of next month. We got a drill program going on there right now, so it's always good to get on the ground and see the rocks coming out. And then I'll be up in Alaska this summer too. So But yeah, we've got strict protocol on all of our sites. So, we do the testing and you have to be negative in quarantine before you head directly to site. So we've been managing it pretty well.
Okay, that's obviously like good to hear. So I think because we have just the results of the poll up and just to see as to how you all voted. Okay, seems to be that Q4 2021 seems to be the most popular answer, which is when we will be trying to run our physical London event. We'll obviously go and keep our viewers and our attendees obviously informed of those developments as our plans evolve. But without further ado, let's get on to our first mining update of the show. You've heard from a short while earlier, but Zach Flood is an experienced geologist who's managed mineral exploration around the world for the past 15 years. Zach co-founded Kenorland Minerals Limited in 2016. And prior to that, Mr. Flood has spent numerous years within the Ivanhoe Group, undertaking project generation and business development, along with evaluating early to advanced stage M&A opportunities in the mining sector. Zach, the floor is yours.
All right, thanks, Andrew. This will be an interesting format for a meeting, but I've got a few minutes here, so I'll just try to hit the high points here. So, yeah, Kenorland Minerals. We started this company in 2016, and we were private for about 4 years, which I think is unusual for a lot of the junior exploration companies that are publicly listed. So we really grew our portfolio, and our team really honed its skills from a real startup stage, and grew the portfolio and partnerships over those 4 years. And we just went public at the beginning of this year, kind of off the back of a discovery we made with one of our joint venture partners, Sumitomo Metal Mining in Quebec there. So the team, we're all geologists. There's 4 of us who are co-founders of the company. We really kind of are focusing on the earlier stage exploration side of the business. Our vision and our goal is really to become a leader in that space. Our approach, while it's not novel, I think what's unique about what we do is at the scale that we're carrying out exploration. We have over 1 million acres of mineral tenure between Quebec and Alaska, which is the jurisdictions that we've really focused on. Some mineral claims in Manitoba as well in the Thompson Nickel Belt, but mostly focusing on gold in Quebec, gold in Alaska. We do have a copper porphyry project in Alaska as well, and then some nickel targets in the Thompson Nickel Belt of Manitoba there. And yeah, so this year was last year was really a turning point for us. As I mentioned, we made this discovery, a high-grade gold discovery, totally bona fide greenfields discovery in northern Quebec in the Frotet Evans Belt. That kind of spurred us, along with the market, kind of the winds shifting, and that spurred us to go public. So we raised $10 million on the go public transaction. And so this year, for new investors into the story, we've got a lot to look forward to. We're spending up to $7 million of sole funded exploration, and we've got 3 partnerships, two projects being funded by Sumitomo Metal Mining, one with Newmont Corporation in Quebec as well. And so there's about $5 million partner funded exploration planned in 2021 as well. And that'll include drilling 3 discovery stage projects. So the Frotet project in Quebec, Healy in Alaska, and Tanacross in Alaska too. And then we have a very large pipeline of additional projects, which are all pretty green fields, but they're all being advanced in a similar kind of systematic manner that we've kind of taken the other projects forward with as well. And of course, we have a full team that does, continual project generation and evaluation. So yeah, it's a really well-rounded, robust exploration company, focused on great jurisdictions. The next slide here, there's just touching on the share structure. We've got 45.5 million shares out basic and 55 fully diluted. We're trading at about 85 cents today. So that's where we're at. The cash position I mentioned there is about 9.5 million in the till. And then I just want to touch on ownership. So management and insiders own about 51%. So it's a large insider ownership there. Institutional investors, we had some new shareholders come in on that reverse takeover transaction to go public. So CIDEX, FTQ, and STBJ are some of the Quebec-based funds. Also Commodity Capital and Exploration Capital Partners Limited, and there's some really long-term well-respected financiers involved as well, including John Tognetti and Paul Stevens and Peter Meredith, who's from the Ivanhoe Group. Not everyone might be familiar with those names, but yeah, they've been supporting us since the early days there. And so if you go to the next slide. Again, just to show you on a map where we're looking, we like to focus on these jurisdictions with really large gold endowment. So of course, the Abitibi in Quebec is where a large number of our kind of pipeline projects are, and then a flagship up there in the Frotet Evans belt in northern Quebec as well. And then in Alaska, we're focused there in the Tintina Gold Province. And so this is, of course, where you have some very large gold systems up there in Alaska, like Fort Knox and Pogo and the Good Pasture. And then we do have a porphyry copper project up there, which is similar age rocks as Casino, which is a very large undeveloped porphyry system in the Yukon. But good jurisdictions, very mining friendly, very large mineral endowments, and yeah, we're really focused on finding new deposits and new mineral systems, and using that kind of large scale systematic approach to achieve those goals. So
okay,
that's pretty much it in summary.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that, for an excellent sort of summary about Kenorland Minerals. I'd like to hand over to our investor guest first. George Petker, I think you've got a question that you'd like to ask Zach.
Yes, I was just wondering, because you are nicely well funded, and it's really great to see a company with especially high insider ownership, and also having not too many shares outstanding. You're an unusual one, you might say. I did want to know, because you have the joint ventures and you have huge land inventories, what has driven your team in determining where the right priorities are, and was that influenced by your partner's direction, or did you have a sort of a certain anonymity as to what you were picking?
In terms of land selection, that's a really good question. So we need to check a few boxes. So in terms of the geology, you have to be in a district with large gold systems. Abitibi is obviously known for a very large endowment of gold, and you want to be on those major deformation zones or structures that host a lot of the big gold deposits. But more importantly, you want to be looking in areas that are underexplored. If you want to find new things, you got to go where other people might not have looked already, and those happen to be and also covered terrain, so areas where there's a lot of glacial cover. So for example, the gold discovery we made in northern Quebec, there's no outcrop, there's no bedrock sticking out of the ground at all. So that was a perfect example of going in. We saw a belt that was relatively underexplored. No one had done any big geochemical programs. We staked about 56,000 hectares, and we brought Sumitomo in, and then we just covered the entire belt with regional till sampling. And that led us to an area of really strong gold anomalism over a big area, and in the till, and we kind of traced back that dispersion plume to what we thought was the source, and then drilled it, and voila, there was a gold system sitting undercover there that no one had ever put a hole into. So we want to make sure we get big land packages. They have to be in areas that are underexplored, ideally covered terrain. So because if it was sticking out of the ground, someone else would have found it. And then in terms of whether or not we partner it out or pursue it ourselves, we would, it's got to be a pretty obvious drill target for us to take a shot at it ourselves. Some of this earlier stage exploration can be quite expensive and very long-term, kind of time-consuming projects, multi-year early stage exploration. And so we'd like to keep a portion of our portfolio being advanced in the background, and funded by the partners. And then this year we're kind of spending our own money on very obvious drill targets that have that near-term potential for a new discovery, because that's really where you move the needle in terms of these smaller junior exploration companies. Yeah.
Thank you.
And then just perhaps if I can just bring in Paola from Synergy Resource Capitals. Do you have a question for Zach?
Yeah, I was marvelous work, by the way. You've done really good, and I think it's probably a good thing that you didn't go public before you were ready. So kudos for that. In terms of your investor base, do you think that? Do you have any particular goals in terms of bringing in more institutional investors or strategic, other than, you know, you're obviously you have it Spanish, but do you have any particular goal in that sense, or are you thinking dual listing, or do you have any interest or goal to diversify a bit your investor base?
Yeah, definitely. It's always, you know, we're a little on the early stage for institutions, although we have some interest, obviously, and we have some support from a few of them. You know, we're probably too early stage for like the RCFs of the world, or, you know, the bigger ones, but the Quebec-based funds like to support earlier stage exploration, which is great. And there's a few smaller institutions out there as well that will play in this space. What I think our goal really is to attract more retail, you know, to get the story out there and kind of broaden that base and create more liquidity in the market. And that's really the challenge, because, you know, we did grow this company pretty tightly over the last 4 years, and it's a relatively new company. You know, some people in Canada know what we're doing in the background because we have a broad network in the industry, but certainly in the retail investor space, we're not very well known. So that's my main goal as a CEO as well, is to kind of tell the story and hopefully get people interested.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very, very much for that. So we can might come back to yourself a little bit later in the show, Zach. But let's go on to our next mining update, which is from Adam Smith, who's the Vice President for Business Development and Corporate Finance at Oroco Resource Corp. Adam has a career of over 25 years in business and corporate finance, and has been a consultant to Oroco since its formation in 2006, and is also a co-founder of Altamira Copper Corp. He is responsible for liaising with Oroco's business and investment partners with North America and overseas. Over to you, Adam.
Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate that. Oroco is based in Vancouver. It's TSX-V listed, and we control the Santo Tomas porphyry copper deposit in coastal northwest Mexico. Santo Tomas hosts a large, circa 950 million ton, historical resource containing approximately 7.4 billion pounds of copper and equivalent gold, silver, and moly. The historical work was conducted using a valid database of greater than 30,000 meters of drilling in 90 core and RC holes by a competent team, utilizing methods that remain relevant today. And we believe that with confirmation drilling, the resource will be validated. Santo Tomas is the subject of a pre-feasibility study by Bateman Engineering, published in 1994, that utilized a resource estimate by Mintech of Tucson and metallurgical test work by MSRDI and others. And it positively scoped Santo Tomas for almost 3 decades of production of approximately 125,000 tons of copper per annum in a clean 28% concentrate. The study identified no design risks and further concluded that the mineral resource at Santo Tomas is likely to increase in grade and tonnage with additional exploration. Following that PFS, copper prices dropped consistently over several years to reach century lows in real terms in 2001. Gold was deemed a relic. Capital markets interest in junior explorers evaporated, and work at Santo Tomas stopped. Following that, a nearly 2-decade-long legal title dispute was fought. We were asked by Santo Tomas as a rightful owner to resolve the dispute, and we did that fully and finally in January of 2020. And that's why we're here 26 years after a positive PFS, and only now recommencing exploration work at Santo Tomas. That period gave us time and the opportunity to assemble surrounding properties. And today we control a 35 square mile concession package containing the historical resource together with all possible extensions. Following the Q1 2020 legal resolution, we commenced a large 3D IP survey at Santo Tomas, covering almost 17 square kilometers, with resolution down to greater than 600 meters. And as of late January, we'd completed 80% of that grid. The survey has successfully mapped resistivity and chargeability characteristics along a swath of 2.1 by 4.3 kilometers along strike, and remains open to the north, with data collection continuing there and expected to conclude this quarter. The survey demonstrates a strong correlation with the chargeability features and the historical drill results, as well as significant exploration potential lateral to the historical resource at depth below it, and below the relatively shallow 200 to 300 meter historical holes. In many cases to the limits of the survey's resolution at depth, as well as to the north, where fieldwork continues. IP anomalies extending from drill-defined zones describe an area 2 to 3 times that containing the historical resource. Wide, deep, analogous to, and extending from zones of known mineralization. Given this, and that most of the shallow historical holes ended in mineralization, we're very positive about the prospect of growing an already large resource at Santa Tomas. We'll start that process with a planned drill program soon, for which we're well funded, having raised $25 million last year. Well funded, targeting a large, very large historically defined resource with a strong likelihood of expansion. It's going to be an interesting year ahead, with somewhere in the range of 60 to 80,000 meters of drilling planned over the next 12 to 15 months. And with Santa Tomas already identified as a probable M&A target by RFC Ambrian, we're hoping it's a rewarding one for our shareholders.
Okay.
There you go. Hope I stuck with my 3 minutes.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that, Adam. Turning to Paola first, have you ever been to that sort of region, and do you have a question for Adam?
No, I have not been there. I was wondering, well, you answered the question why this, there hasn't been any progress in such a long time, and why you've answered that, which was one of the questions that I had. Let's go back to goals. So in terms of where you sit now, you have all this historical data, but obviously you need to bring it back to today.
Yes.
What's your main or the first things that you have planned to sort of start bridging that gap? Because you have a massive, like the market cap, the current market cap is huge, and you only have historical information. So how are you going to bridge that gap?
Good question, Paola. The historical resource covers an area of about 3 kilometers, 600 meters depth, 600 meters east to west, and only down to about 200-300 meters. But given that relatively limited scope, there's a resource of about 7.4 billion pounds of contained copper. And yes, our valuation is probably somewhere between what you'd expect, given a discount for historical resource, and where evaluation should be with a current compliant resource. So we're expecting drilling to commence to confirm the historical, to extend those drill holes, to extend the depth, to look at the lateral extensions, and to start drilling in an entirely new zone, a third zone, so-called Brasiles, which is the northernmost zone. And with that program, I would think that we're going to get the kind of drill holes that that both confirm and expand upon the resource and start to fill in some of the valuation. Drilling will commence, I would say, end of Q2, beginning of Q3 or so. We're going to focus on the area that was drilled in most detail in the past, which is a coherent core of about 300 million tons of approximately 0.5 equivalent, outcropping, extendable at depth, we think, because of both the historical drill holes and the IP survey. And that core, which is relatively low strip in a mining scenario, will underpin ultimate economics in a PFS study at Santa Tomas. So simply bringing the drilling up to date, confirming that high grade core, showing that the IP anomalies correlate strongly with historical drill results, and that we can expand the resource, I think is how we intend to bring the data up to the valuation.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that answer. I think we've also got a question from George Petker as well. I think George Petker, you just start unmuting yourself. So, George, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, Adam. I was just curious. I know that you have a moly portion within the deposit. In a financial and economic financial modeling, what would you predict would be the split offs as far as percentages?
To date, well, the moly zone, the south zone is more moly rich. The north zone appears to be more gold rich, and then the northernmost zone would appear to be gold rich again. So clearly, there's got to be some scheduling here, some capex planning that incorporates those different zones at different times. In general, the contribution of gold, silver, and moly runs in the range of 12 to 15% of the value. So
Okay.
obviously, there's a lot of work still to do in terms of the moly, and I think realistically, the focus initially will be on the north and Brazilians, which, as I say, are more gold rich.
But you would have, given you have those items as a potential for stream for financing, that would be something that could be considered, correct?
Certainly, yeah. At this point, we're well financed for the first 50, 60,000 meters at some point, and we have talked to two parties about potential deals such as that. But I think clearly we need core, we need assays, we need some metallurgy before we go that step. But yeah, that's certainly a possibility down the road to take us across the line in terms of funding.
And one other question was, what is the nearest producer of consequence in your area?
So Piedras Verdes, which is an open pit mixed oxide sulfide deposit, is northwest of us, about 60 kilometers. That's run by Invector, which is a private equity entity out of Mexico City. And immediately to the east of us is a former operator owned by Corp. And then northeast and east, there's a number of other operations, sort of well-known Canadian-owned gold and silver operations. But the Invector operation at Piedras Verdes is the closest open pit or the closest copper producer. And then north again, but a number of hundreds of kilometers to the north is, of course, the Cananea deposit in northern Sonora. And
were they on the copper producer? Are they SXEW? Do you know?
No, Cananea is the number 5 producer in the world by size. It will produce greater than 400,000 tons of copper in concentrate this year, and it's purely a sulfide operation.
Okay, great, thank you.
As would we be.
Yeah, sulfide.
Okay. Well, that was a fantastic project there from Adam Smith of Oroco Resource. And again, we'll be coming back to Adam later on in the show. I'd now like to go on to our third mining update, which is from Canstar Resources. Rob Bruggeman, President and CEO of Canstar Resources, has over 20 years of experience in corporate development, equity research, and institutional sales and trading. He has a deep understanding of Canadian equity markets and the mining sector, having worked as a sell-side research analyst, desk analyst on the proprietary trading desk at TD Securities, and head of the sales and trading desk at a boutique brokerage firm in Toronto. Mr. Bruggeman is also chairman of the board of Abrapata Resource Group, a TSX venture listed company focused on silver gold exploration in Argentina. But today, Rob will be talking about Canstar. Rob, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. So Canstar is a Canadian-based exploration company, and we're focused on exploration on the island of Newfoundland, which is off the eastern coast of Canada. Newfoundland's become a pretty exciting destination for gold exploration. It's taken some time, but we've got Marathon Gold now with its Valentine Lake deposit in central Newfoundland. That's now over 4 million ounces. But more recently, part of what got things really started was there's a company called Newfound Gold that has the Queensway project, which is shown in orange on this slide. And in 2019, they drilled a hole, hit 19 meters of 93 grams per ton of gold. So there's some analogies to Fosterville, but the takeaway from that was, hey, this area is prime for orogenic style gold mineralization, and it's vastly underexplored. So we optioned what's really the second biggest claim package after Queensway, and that's located to the south on the same structural trend with similar rocks and similar styles of mineralization. In both cases, we have about almost 100 kilometers of potential strike length along that structure. But in our case, we're about 2 years behind Newfound Gold and Queensway. The property hasn't been drilled since 2011, and most of the drilling that has taken place here, and there's less than 10,000 meters, it was shallow, and most of it was done in the 1980s. So this is really going to be the first systematic exploration program. The other major difference is Newfound Gold as a company now has a market cap of 725 million Canadian. We're still earlier stage, but our market cap is 18 million Canadian. So that's 1/8. So obviously you see, if we come up with a new discovery, we've got some pretty massive upside potential here. Next slide. So this is showing our claim package, which is over 620 square kilometers and almost 100 kilometers long. What you can see here is gold occurrences marked with stars, and these are at surface. And we've got more than 20 gold occurrences in the central part of the property, and those span a distance of 30 kilometers. It's probably no coincidence these are clustered around the road. There's a highway that intersects the middle part of the property, and the outer edges of the property really are not well explored. So while it's early stage, the fact that there's 30 kilometers of mineralization here, some of it quite high grade, is significant. So we think this is highly prospective for discovery. We only got to spend 2 months on the property last year because we optioned it in the fall of 2020. That was on a small area that we call the Kendall Prospect and the Blowout Prospect. We had a limited season because of weather, but the reason we focused there was the prospectors who optioned the property to us had a discovery there that was visible gold and quartz veins that actually assayed over 4,000 grams per ton of gold, which was by far the highest sample on the property. So that's been our focus. This year, we're going to do a bunch of regional exploration to find new targets and occurrences in those less explored areas. But in the central portion of the property, the goal is to advance those to the point where we can drill them. So there will be a drill program this year on some of these targets, and we're pretty excited about doing that. Next slide. Just in terms of the company, I think very strong technical team. Most of the exploration team is in Newfoundland, but they're complemented by 3 people on the technical advisory committee who have PhDs in geology. So that should come in helpful. Those include Laurie Curtis, who's a retired mining executive and former research analyst. We have Lawrence Winter, who's from Altius Minerals, which optioned some of the claims to us. And then we have Dave Palmer from Probe Metals, who's also a director of the company. So as mentioned, about 18 million is the current market cap. So lots of upside and a good shareholder base.
Okay. Thank you very much for that, Rob. That was an excellent summary of the opportunities there at Canstar. Perhaps if I can first of all bring in George Petker. George, do you have any thoughts about Canstar and a question for Rob?
Let's see, am I muted?
You are live with us, George. We can hear you loud and clear.
Sorry, I didn't see my button up there. I was intrigued, having the length that was there. It did refer to the yellow stars were historic occurrences. Were there, at any point in time, has there been a past production in that specific land package?
No, there never has been. And the reason we refer to those as historic is just because we didn't get the assays. So even the work that was done in, say, 2019 by the prospectors, we have to consider those historic.
Okay.
It's just anything new that we've collected and followed QA, QC, we can call current. But most of those really do date back to either period around 2011 or the late 80s. With just minimal work done on them since.
My knowledge of that area was there's used to be a lot of pulp and paper. Um, does that give you access ability to some of the features in your property easily because of past forest roads or anything like that?
It does help somewhat. The biggest help is obviously having the highway through the middle of the property, but there are some old forest roads, as well as hydro cuts. So there's a big hydroelectric plant. In fact, I think its biggest in Newfoundland is right in that area. And so we've got hydro lines, hydro cuts. So the access is pretty good, but it's a 100-kilometer long project almost. So certainly when you get to either the southern edge or the northern edge, it does get more remote. Although we have some people out there right now just taking advantage of winter conditions.
And can I have one last question? And sometimes a lot of people don't like it when this is asked, but it's something that investors always look for is, what is your burn rate based on the fact you've got $2.5 million in the till? You've got X amount of drilling, I presume, that's going to be logged into that. What is the sort of the G&A cut? And basically, when will you have to go back to market?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And the philosophy of the company and my personal philosophy too is we really want as much money to go into the ground as possible. So we do everything we can to keep that G&A burn rate low. We don't have a big staff. And so I'd say the burn rate on an annual basis is about 600,000, which I think is probably about as low as we can get it. What we try to do is focus on equity linked incentives as opposed to say salaries. And I think that makes for good alignment. And then it's worth pointing out too, we don't have a big drill program planned yet. We have to advance a few of these targets with some surface work before we start drilling. And the initial holes are also going to be quite shallow. So the hope really is that we do a small drill program on key targets. And then based on those results, we go back to the market to say, okay, now fund us for a much bigger drill program, and throw a bit of G&A in there too. But there's no plans to ramp up the G&A, but certainly plans to ramp up the drilling.
Okay, good. Well, thank you for answering that so directly.
Well, thank you very much for that. Just bringing in Paola Rojas from Synergy Resource Capital. Do you have one or two questions for Rob?
Yes. Being, in comparison with the other two companies, you're obviously an earlier stage play. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just the reality. I think that when you are in that space, the importance of the team around the, built around the portfolio and the company is even more important. You've assembled quite a good team. You put on some really good names on your technical advisory team committee. I personally know Laurie from Argentina when he was with Intrepid. So good job getting him out of retirement. That's a good thing. So how did you just happen to, how did you assemble this team? So what was your process? How did it happen? Did you guys know each other from the past? Had you worked together before? How did that came about?
Yeah, so to be, I guess, brutally honest, I looked at my skill set and my shortcomings, and for something this early stage, yeah, I'm an engineer and a finance person. I'm not an exploration geologist. So I said, what can I do to compensate for that? And certainly that technical advisory committee helps greatly with that. With Lori, we've worked together in the past. So with Abra Plata, which is now Abra Silver, which I'm involved with, he was an advisor to that company, and then took an interest really on his own initiative when he looked at Canstar, the project that we optioned last year, and volunteered to join the technical advisory committee. I asked him to join the board, but I think that was too much coming out of retirement, and his wife wouldn't allow that. But yeah, at least I've got his brain on the geology side.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's I think it's when you are in these early stages, it's really important to me at least, and then I presume for a lot of investors, the motivations behind behind the team and why you're working together. So it's thank you for the honesty, and I think it was good thinking. Do you expect this team to be able to continue, to progress the project on, for the long haul, or do you think you're gonna need to add other people to the core team? Obviously, not the.
Yeah, to the core team. So we have a Newfoundland-based team, which has been very helpful in light of COVID, because we really can't get people in otherwise unless they quarantine for 2 weeks. But there's some other benefits with that too, where we try to hire people from the nearby communities. So there's a personal connection, and then there's knowledge as well. I mean, Newfoundland is a small place. Everybody knows each other, and they know of the other projects. So the one person I didn't mention was the VP of Exploration, who we brought in January. Her name is Dawn Evans Lambswood, structural geologist, but she actually wrote the 43-101 report on the Queensway project that I referenced. So she's got that insight as well. So yeah, we'll hopefully grow the team based on the results. But I think for now, we've got a pretty good core team, and we'll see what we can do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that, Paola. Thank you very much for that, Rob. We're just going to, for the last 10 minutes, just have a quick kind of closing polling question. So if I ask my colleague Elaine to bring that polling question up onto the screen, which kind of links back to a question I asked earlier, which is basically how much international travel do you plan doing in 2022? And whilst we're voting, I'm going to ask the opinion of our panelists, but I'm going to ask them a slightly different question. How many days of travel, international travel, did you do in 2019? And how would you think it would compare to 2022? So perhaps I can first of all go to Zach Flood. Hey, Zach, can we just unmute Zach?
Sorry about
hey,
that,
Zach,
guys.
I think we can go in there, hear you now, Zach.
Okay. 2019, honestly, our projects are in North America. I'm based in Vancouver. I go to Toronto maybe 2 or 3 times a year. Other than that, yeah, not much international travel. I mean, obviously up to Alaska to the projects up there. I think travel, I mean, sometimes now that everyone's used to doing the Zoom calls, it is more efficient, and maybe you don't need to fly all the way somewhere to meet someone, for the first time, or you can get something done on a call like that. So we'll probably be reducing that a little bit, but I've never really been traveling, too much all over the world. Again, with projects in Quebec and Alaska, we don't need to go too far. I'm based in Vancouver as well. So, yeah.
And how about yourself, Adam?
Oh, I think 2019, I was almost certainly on the road at least 1 week or 10 days every month. Just to give you an idea of the international distribution of our shareholder base. In last year's two big financings, we had retail and institutional participation from, I'll just off the top of my head, the UK, France, Italy, Germany, Switzerland, Israel, Australia, Peru, certainly all over the United States, all over Canada, and numerous other countries, Singapore, Hong Kong, and even China. So, you know, we like to get out and meet shareholders. We like to visit them, but certainly to I guess go along with the sentiment that we've learned how to do that virtually and doing it from home. Certainly has some advantages. I think in future I'd like to do a balance of of travel and this type of presentation. It saves time, saves wear and tear, and certainly saves money.
Yeah, we certainly think that in 2022 we're probably doing a mixture of online events and physical events. We think that online events are definitely here to stay. Rob, what would your answer be?
Yeah, no, I think it's sort of similar to the other answers. I mean, with my focus on Newfoundland, I guess it wouldn't qualify as international travel. So I do plan to spend a fair bit of time there, just getting to know the property. And yeah, the sad thing about COVID is I've got people on my team there who I've never met other than Zoom. So I think for that personal bond, certainly, you know, I definitely want to spend a lot of time there. Beyond that, for the marketing, yeah, I think it's going to be a mixture of remote and going a few different places, but I wouldn't see it being more than 10% of the time.
Yeah, I think it's certainly an interesting point you make, Rob, about staff, because certainly I find that interacting with, you know, staff that I know on Zoom is kind of quite easy. Where it becomes more challenging is probably when it's staff that are new to the business and how you kind of do that training on Zoom and how you integrate them into the business. Is that like a challenge that you've faced, Rob? Or?
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's worked surprisingly well with Zoom. Yeah, I like the people a great deal, but there's something to be said for the, you know, being able to spend time with people outside of work, getting to know them personally, build that connection. That's really the part that's missing. Yeah, you can theoretically do, say, drinks on Zoom, but it's really not the same. I like that personal bond.
Yes, yeah, that's kind of definitely the case. George, for 2022, will you be doing more international travel than you were before COVID-19?
Muted.
George, you there with us?
He's muted.
Did we get unmuted? There we are. Yes, and you know, the Zoom on the drinking, just to address that, you just have to make sure you send a bottle of wine to each person that you're going to have on the Zoom.
Yeah.
And we all open together. So anyway, going back to the travel, yes, in my case, because I will be in both Turkey and North America, I'll probably have more international travel, certainly than I did in 2019, and definitely more than I did in 2020. So.
And Paola, I mean, I know it's obviously a slightly sort of different situation there down there in Australia, but your international travel plans for 2022, you think you'll be doing more than you were, say, back in, I think I last saw you in 2019 at our Minds and Money London event.
Yeah. Yeah, that was, it's been a long time. I honestly think, well, we've been doing, you know, everybody said that, you know, we've been mixing or the video meetings and the Zoom calls and all that. We had been using that for a long time because we got used to, from even before I came to Australia, when I was in Argentina, I was used to having, you know, clients, and back then it was just clients mostly, but everybody was in another country, so it was, the international travel was a part of what I needed to do. When I came to Australia, that reduced, but it was still significant. So in 2019, I don't know how, you know, I never took the toll or figured out how much I actually, you know, days away. But I think it's gonna go back to a similar level, but at the same time, we are doing even more calls because people are more used to it. Before it was sort of unusual and you had to do phone calls because people didn't have the you know, the interest. And at the same time, because now we have a portfolio, we're working on a new investment in Brazil. We haven't been able to go there yet. Obviously, we can't leave Australia, as I said. But we have that. We have a company invest in a company in Chile, another one in the US. So gold, copper, silver, lithium. So we have to get back to, and we have to go and see the projects. But I think I'm really happy where we are in terms of communication as not just us, but as a community. I think we've done a lot of work to make sure that we are still connecting. I agree, it's not the same. It's much better to have, you know, a nice meal and a drink in person. But I think it's going to be good to get back to that, and I'm very, very eager to get back on a plane. To be honest, I see one every time, and I go like, I want to get on one.
Yeah. It's definitely the case that we started doing these events back in April, May of last year, and I think at first of all people were just doing these events just to sort of stay in touch. And then, you know, probably August, September, I think I started to see more of our clients actually use it as a platform to transact and do business, which is obviously great for us and great for Minds and Money. Having said that, I can't wait to get back to doing physical events, as that's one of the reasons why I got into this business in the first place. So I really hope to see all of you sort of like again sort of soon. I think this is bringing us up to the top of the hour. So all that remains for me to do is to go and thank our guests, who are George, Adam, Zach, Paola, and Rob. Also, a big thanks to our sponsors, who are Kenorland, Oroco Resources, and Canstar Resources, as well as the Resource Global Network. We'll be having we're having 2 more 5 at 5s later this week as part of our Minds and Money March online global event. Look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.